President Cyril Ramaphosa has confirmed that the top six of the ANC will meet former President Jacob Zuma soon. The meeting is centered around Zuma's defiance of the Constitutional Court order to testify at the State Capture Commission. Now joining me to speak further on the planned meeting is advocate Mosima Rasesemola from Mosima Legal to tell us more about the legal ramifications of further defiance to date. Advocate Mosima, very good morning. Thank you so much for joining us. We find ourselves in a situation where the former president continues to defy the Concord. What would be the implications of an ordinary citizen attempting to do the same?
Thank you, Hugo. I think the first thing that we really need to do in order to effectively deal with the issue is recognize that former President Jacob Zuma is not an ordinary citizen, but also that he has not been treated like an ordinary citizen throughout. The language of the commission throughout the entire process has been to consistently remind him of his constitutional obligations and how he features in the general context of this entire matter, and him appearing as a witness and being very central in the terms of reference for this. So we could discuss it in terms of how an ordinary citizen would be dealt with. And I think if it were an ordinary citizen, the summons that were issued way back in 2019 and 2020 would have been enforced in a normal process of contempt of court, and then the issue would have been dealt with in terms of Section 6 and Section 4 of the Commissions Act. But because the very nature of the matter is that we're dealing with a former president who appears in the terms of reference, but also was very central in the establishment of the commission. But lastly, that he tried to have a review set up of the decision of the public protector to block further investigation, then it is not by any standard a normal matter. And I think everything that we see happening now is bound to happen given the build up to today.
So is it fair to say that he is getting some form of preferential treatment?
I mean, I wouldn't call it preferential in the sense that the commission can always rationalize it. And I think with the language of each of the court applications that they make, particularly to the Constitutional Court, Prof. Mosana has been consistent in flagging the fact that there is an obligation or there are certain responsibilities that are attached to you as former president in respect of constitutionality. But also to say that I think Chairperson DCJ Zondo has consistently, tried to deal with the commission as a commission and not as a court of law. He tried to attach the mandate of it being a truth-seeking exercise and not trying to vilify witnesses and really trying to find out the truth about the entire matter of the so-called state capture. And so that's why the treatment has been in the way that it has been. I don't know if preferential is the right word to use, but definitely I feel like the commission took full stock of who former President Jacob Zuma is in the context of the commission, and they approached it based off of that.
Well, Advocate, you've talked about his obligations. Let's talk about his rights. What are the rights that former President Jacob Zuma is entitled to?
Well, I think what his legal representation have always stuck to was to say that, look, I appeared on the one day and I felt like I was being attacked, and I think as a result, the chairperson has to recuse himself. It's very important that witnesses be treated properly, and as a part of legal proceedings, it's always justified for a person to ask a chairperson of a judicial forum of any sort to recuse themselves. It's not so much about, I mean, he does have rights, definitely, but it's not so much about whether he has rights or not, but it's about the procedures that have been followed, both from the side of former President Jacob Zuma's representation, as well as the commission itself. And I think some of these issues were flagged during the hearing on the 29th of December 2020, when Advocate Ngugaitobi Senior Counsel was laying the arguments for the commission to explain the entire story of what had transpired from the time former President Jacob Zuma began having a problem with the chairperson of the commission, and which culminated in him, bringing a recusal application in the High Court. So I don't think it's so much an issue of who has rights or not, because everyone has rights. Obviously, he has rights, but we're in the stalemate that we're in right now, in the South African legal system, because of how certain procedures were followed, but also certain value judgments that were made on both sides, and certain strategies that were, approached, and how, time frames and periods were dealt with. It always blew my mind how everyone would send a letter, or an application would be sent, or an affidavit would be sent on just the day before, on the day when which was the due date or whatever. So I think it's more a procedural matter more than it's an issue of whether a person has substantive rights or not, because it's a truism that everyone has rights.
Well, you speak of a stalemate, which suggests that the law is grey. I've always thought that it was either black or white and nothing in between.
I mean, I think the role of adjudication, and particularly judicial review, has always been central to the face of a legal system, right? So we as legal practitioners could conjure up any type of argument that we come up with in order to justify why our client's position should be protected. But it always turns on judicial review and how our courts deal with matters. In the application that the commission made recently, they came on hard to explain the implications of this type of a stalemate and what it has on constitutionality in the country, but just generally on the rule of law. And I think South Africa, and particularly the Constitutional Court, but its entire legal system, bears a very heavy burden at this particular point, and there has to be decisiveness in terms of how an issue like this ought to be dealt with. At the end of the day, if a legal forum is asked of to deal with a matter and to inquire on a matter and to make a judgment on a matter, I think it's important that that particular forum has to take the